I will be your speaker today. Welcome to our webinar on web bots, understanding web bots and how they hurt your business. So we're going to go ahead and begin. There are still people pouring in, but we'll go over some housekeeping items first. That'll give everyone a chance to join us. So first and foremost, our housekeeping items. Thanks again for joining. The webinar is going to be about 30 minutes long. Questions will be answered after the session, and you can feel free to submit them using either the chat window, or you can tweet them to me using my Twitter handle, which is Orion Evolution. So I will try my best to monitor that while I'm doing the Q&A session. A little bit about me. My name is Orion Cassetto. I'm the Senior Product Marketing Manager at Incapsula. Prior to Incapsula, I held several product marketing positions at other security firms, those being Imperva and Armorized Technologies. My experience is chiefly in web application security and also software as a service solutions. Today, we'll be talking about an overview of bot technology. Then we'll discuss how bots are used for hacking and also denial of service attacks. After that, we'll discuss the impact of content scraping on websites. And then I'll give you some suggestions for bot detection and also mitigation. Probably the best place to begin is by talking about what is a bot, and perhaps what isn't a bot. So a bot, as pertains to the internet, is not a time-traveling cyborg assassin sent from the future to kill Sarah Connor. With all jokes aside, a bot is actually a software program which performs some tasks across the internet, usually a useful task. They're usually performing simple tasks. They do so in a highly repetitive and rapid manner with the goal of producing results that are unobtainable by humans in terms of speed and efficiency. Bots are responsible for many small jobs.
What's the gist of?
Shira, can you mute your phone? Thank you. So bots are responsible for many small jobs that amount to critical tasks that we take for granted, such as populating search engine results. Also, bots usually visit websites in regular patterns and do things like checking if websites are online, whether they're available or not, measuring their speed, helping to fetch content, powering APIs. They can also be used to scan websites to find security vulnerabilities. And that's an important one which we'll come back to and talk a little bit more about later. So, based on research by the Incapsula team, bots now make up as much as 61% of website traffic. While much of this traffic is legitimate, it would be naive to assume that helping facilitate a better internet is all that they're up to. In fact, roughly 50% of the automated traffic that we have analyzed is actually malicious. We talked about some of the great things that automated clients on the internet are responsible for, like powering search engine results, populating APIs, which are also known as application programming interfaces, and finding security flaws in website codes. What about bad bots, the malicious ones? What exactly are they up to, and how does that affect websites? Well, bad bots are actually responsible for a host of malicious activities, including site scraping to steal website content, comment spam, which you usually see on blogs and forums, fraud and click fraud, and even web application attacks. By blocking bad bots, website owners can significantly improve the security posture of their website. Now, it's important to keep in mind that blocking bad bots is one goal, but it would be very disadvantageous to block all bots. So care should be taken to create an ecosystem that is both free of bad bots, but also welcoming to good bots and helper bots. Over the last 2 decades, bots have evolved from simple scripts with minimal capabilities to complex programs that are sometimes able to convince websites and the security precautions of those websites that they're actually humans. According to Incapsula research, almost 30% of bots can now accept cookies, and almost 1% of them are able to run JavaScript. An example of a highly sophisticated bot is that of a browser-based bot. These bots exist solely within infected browsers and thus can perform all of the tasks that a browser could. They can frequently do that with access to the cookies and the sessions available to that browser. Now, this makes them a powerful tool for hackers looking to bypass security protocols that would identify a less sophisticated bot. An example of how far bots have evolved is that of Google bots. A recent study published by the Encapsula Labs, which is our research team, found that an average website is visited by about 187 Google bots per day, and that each Google bot visit usually visits around 4 pages. Of these Google bot visits, 1 in 24 of them will actually be from a fake Google bot. Now, why would a hacker create a fake Google bot? Well, many websites are designed to permit Google bots into areas of a website which other bots would not normally be able to access. It's something akin to the bot version of a fake ID or perhaps a backstage pass. Like you might expect, imposter Google bots are typically up to no good. They usually perform malicious tasks like attacking websites, performing marketing intelligence, stealing web page content, posting comment spam, and a host of other unwanted activities. Now that we've spent some time reviewing the basics of bots and you have a firm understanding of what a bot is and what it isn't, how far they've come, I want to shift the focus of our discussion and talk about how they can be used for hacking. The first example I want to talk about is comment spam. If you've spent any time on the internet, be that blog sites or forums, you've probably noticed suspicious-looking blog posts for things like sneakers, designer bags, Viagra, Cialis, other sorts of things of that nature. That is comment spam, and it's typically put there by purpose-built bots which seek out websites that accept user comments and that are also not designed to defend against submissions made by automated clients. Comment spam, while more of a nuisance than anything else, does have several negative effects on websites. From the user point of view, these posts are typically mostly annoying but result in a worse viewing experience. The reason is that you need to sort through all of these spam posts in order to find legitimate pieces of information. They can also direct visitors off to potentially malicious websites where they could be silently infected with malware. From the website operator point of view, they tend to drive traffic away from websites. They could link to competitors' websites, and they're burdensome to deal with. A website owner has to go through and identify and then clean off all of these comment spams from their comment sections. Another type of automated attack, typically performed by bots, is click fraud. Now, click fraud is the act of illegitimately clicking on a pay-per-click ad. Click fraud, tongue twister there, is commonly overlooked, and it's a very insidious weapon. It usually manifests itself in one of 2 forms. Click fraud can be performed by competitors of advertisers or by competitors of ad publishers. And by a publisher, I mean the website that's actually showing the ad. When performed by competitors of an advertiser, bots are usually created which click on ads at a very high rate of speed, thus forcing the advertiser to pay for fake ads which were never actually seen by humans. When performed by publishers, click fraud seeks to make a bot that is actually, it tends to make a bot which appears that the owner of the website is trying to click on their own ads. Now, the goal here would be clicking on your own ads is typically in breach of contract with the ad networks, and it would result in banning of the publisher. So for a website, depending on ad revenue, this could be devastating. So the idea, again, there is that by creating a bot that is clicking on ads frequently, it looks like the publisher is actually clicking on their own ads so that they would get banned. Another major bot-related security issue is search engine optimization referral spam. Search engine optimization is commonly referred to as SEO. An excellent case study for SEO referral spam is that of Smalt, which happened earlier this year. Smalt is a Ukrainian-based SEO company which recently launched an enormous referral spam campaign. The campaign utilized a network of some 290,000 malware-infected computers to crawl the internet looking for vulnerable targets and then attacking them. Once a victim was found, the botnet visited them with a fake referral source. These referral sources belong to websites that Samalt was paid to improve the search engine rankings for. Referral links are one of the criteria which Google uses to evaluate search engine rankings, and when Google crawls these victim websites, it will notice all of the fake referral links in the public logs of these websites and then increase the SEO rankings of Samalt's clients. So, why does this matter for you or any other website owner? Well, referral spam needs to be identified and blocked because of the presence of fake SEO referrals can actually cause long-term damage to website search engine results and can result in complete blacklisting or removal from page results on search engines like Google and Bing, etc. Think about it for a second. Being blacklisted from Google would clearly have a negative impact on your website or any other website. Another rising bot-related threat is DDoS attacks. DDoS attacks stand for distributed denial of service, and it's a type of attack where hundreds or thousands of infected computers band together into a single weapon, referred to as a botnet. This botnet is then used to attack a single target with the goal of overwhelming the network or the server using it, thus creating a website outage. DDoS attacks are quickly becoming a favorite weapon for attackers because they're relatively cheap to perform and difficult to defend against. One interesting campaign that happened earlier this year around February or March targeted high-profile software-as-a-service companies such as Meetup, Basecamp, Vimeo, and Bitly. These software-as-a-service companies have built successful online applications that can scale to support millions of users and deliver huge amounts of content. Still, all of these examples and many more were brought down with DDoS attacks. It's frequently the case that DDoS attackers will request ransom for small amounts of money, like a couple of $100s, in exchange for ending an attack and restoring a website's availability. Although the dollar amounts requested may be small, these attacks are typically large enough to bring down any company that does not have an active DDoS mitigation solution in place. Let's take a look at how DDoS attacks work and the roles that bots play in them. This network diagram shows an example of traffic flowing under normal conditions. Website visitors are routed across the internet, through a customer's internet service provider, and then to the destination website. Data is then sent back along this same route to the website visitor. DDoS attacks interrupt this flow by overwhelming internet connection or an internet-connected device. A common type of DDoS attack is called a volumetric attack, and it does this again by banding together hundreds of thousands of computers into a botnet, which is short for a bot network. Then using this botnet to attack a single target. On the way to the target, the volume generated by this traffic becomes so immense that it cannot fit through the internet connection the website owner has purchased from its ISP. The result is that no legitimate traffic is going to be able to use this conduit, and thus the website will appear like it's offline until the attack subsides. If website availability is important to you, then DDoS protection should be important too. Any application without a DDoS mitigation strategy in place is at risk. Now, the thing about DDoS mitigation is that it's actually very tricky to do because of the volume and the complexity of these attacks, and it usually requires specialized tools or services in order to mitigate it. Bots can also be used as powerful reconnaissance tools for hackers. Web vulnerability scanners are programs which use specialized bots to crawl through a website and to find security flaws. Typically, these tools are used by website owners on their own websites in order to find and help them fix vulnerabilities in their applications. In the hands of hackers, these tools can turn into a weapon, a very powerful weapon that can be pointed at websites which they don't own. Combined with a web crawler, hackers can create tools which are able to troll the internet and automatically look for vulnerable websites. Now that we know that hackers have an automated tool that they can use, which they can automatically use to assess websites for vulnerabilities, you might be asking yourself, what is the chance that your website has an application which has a vulnerability? Well, according to a report by Sensic, a leading vulnerability scanner, 96% of today's web applications have vulnerabilities. And of that, 13% of the websites can be automatically compromised. We've talked about several nefarious things that bots can do to compromise the security of victim websites. One such activity that is so widespread that it warrants its own discussion is that of site scraping. So we'll spend the next few slides to explore what site scraping is, how it works, and why it's a problem for website owners. The most common type of scraping is called site scraping. The goal of this activity is to copy or steal web page content for use elsewhere. This repurposing of content may or may not be approved by the website owner. Now, typically bots do this by crawling a website, assessing the source code of that website, and then parsing it to remove the key pieces of data that they want. After obtaining content, they typically post it elsewhere on the internet. A more advanced type of scraping is that of database scraping. Conceptually, it's similar to that of site scraping, except that hackers will create a bot which interacts with victim web applications to retrieve data from its database. Think about a website such as an insurance quoting website. A bot could be created which would try all possible combinations in an application to obtain quote prices for all scenarios. For example, it could tell the application that it was a 25-year-old male trying to get a quote for a Honda, and then for a Toyota, and then for a Ferrari. Each time it would get a different result back from the application. Given enough tries, it could be possible to obtain entire data sets from the application. Clearly, with the number of permutations available in this scenario, a bot would be preferable to a human in terms of being able to do this efficiently. Database scraping can be used to steal intellectual property, price lists, customer lists, underwriting, etc. There's many, many different uses for it. Scraping isn't always malicious. There are many cases where the goal of data owners is simply to propagate data to as many people as possible and to do so as efficiently as possible. For example, many government websites provide data which is intended to be consumed by the general public. This data is frequently available over APIs, but sometimes scrapers need to be employed in order to gather and distribute that data. Another example of sites which could be powered by bots include aggregation sites such as travel sites, hotel booking sites, concert ticket sites, and many others. Bots which distribute content from these sites, whether they obtain the content over an API or by scraping, tend to drive traffic towards the data owner's websites. In this case, these bots may actually function as a critical piece of the website's business model. So let's talk about how scraping can actually hurt your business. So scraping can be a powerful tool, and in the right hands it helps to automate the gathering and spread of information. In the wrong hands it can lead to data theft, the theft of intellectual property, and an unfair competitive advantage. Consider the case of a rental car agency. If one company created a bot which regularly checks the price of its competitor and then used that information to slightly undercut its competitor at every given price point, it would have a clear competitive advantage. This lower price would then appear on all sorts of aggregator sites which compare the price of both rental car companies, and would likely result in a more competitive price and positioning for one of those companies, which would appear on the aggregator sites and would also lead to higher conversions and also higher search engine rankings. When considering what to do with bots, it's important to fully assess the impact of a specific bot before deciding whether or not to allow it access to your website. Things you could think about are, does this automated client add or subtract value to your business? Is it driving traffic toward your business or away from your business? Is it driving conversions for your business or taking conversions away? We've spent a lot of time talking about what bots are, how they're used for hacking and site scraping. Now let's begin to discuss how to identify and how to mitigate them. The most effective way to identify bots is using a specialized tool. Bot mitigation tools typically employ one or more of the following approaches. The static approach looks at readily available information about website visitors. This usually includes the structure of web requests, header information, browser agent info, and several other criteria. Another approach is referred to as a challenge-based approach. This checks to see what kind of support a visitor has. Most humans run an environment to browse the internet which is capable of supporting cookies and JavaScript. And for visitors who are not running that sort of environment, a CAPTCHA can be prevented, and this will give humans the ability to prove their own humanity. They can easily look at the picture, type out the characters, and prove that they are a human. Bots, on the other hand, don't have the ability typically to understand the picture in a CAPTCHA and to insert the correct characters. Lastly, a behavioral approach can be taken. This would look at how a visitor is interacting with a website. It can, it could include assessing information about how quickly and in what order a visitor is requesting information and how it is interacting with the web server. Also, JavaScript injection can be used to actively test clients. It could be used to do things like look for keyboard strokes and also mouse clicks, which are typically indicative of human behavior. A bot typically doesn't have a keyboard to click on to make keyboard strokes. They usually don't have a mouse which they can use to move left and right and make mouse clicks. So this type of testing really allows you to weed out bots from humans. All of this information is then combined to determine whether or not a website visitor is human, and then to classify it by visiting purpose. A common thought is that Robots.txt can be used to protect against bad bots. Now let's look at what Robots.txt actually is and what it's capable of. First off, Robots.txt is basically a list of rules which bots visiting a specific website are supposed to obey. Legitimate bots, including search engines like Google and the bots from those search engines and also Bing and all the others, will read this text file and they will understand the orders and carry out the orders. Bad bots, on the other hand, ignore the rules. If you knew that a specific client of a specific bot was visiting your site, you could actually use Robots.txt to block it. But for the most part, Robots.txt is not a good tool for blocking against malicious bots. Instead, it should be thought of as a tool to dictate what good bots on your website are doing and how they should obey. In conclusion, bad bots are responsible for a large number of serious security threats to websites. Website operators can greatly enhance their site's security posture by analyzing traffic for bots, identifying malicious clients, and then blocking them while maintaining site access for good bots, search engine bots, helper bots, etc. The easiest way to do this is through the use of third-party tools, which are commonly available as either a standalone product or as part of other security solutions, such as web application firewalls or application delivery controllers. In closing, I want to briefly tell you about how Incapsula can help. Incapsula is a cloud-based service that secures and accelerates websites. It works by using DNS redirection to route website traffic through the Incapsula network. Once traffic is flowing through Incapsula, malicious traffic and bad bots are blocked and legitimate traffic is accelerated. This leads to a more secure, faster loading website. For a free trial, please visit our website at www.incapsula.com. That's my last slide before we move on to the question and answer section. So we have a few minutes. Please feel free to either tweet at Orion Evolution, and I will answer your questions. You can also send them to info@incapsula.com, or you can type them into the chat box. Okay, one of the questions that has come in is, if 61% of web traffic is bots, why isn't this reflected in my Google Analytics? That's a great question. If you remember earlier in my presentation where I said that bots are evolving and that around 30% of them can now support cookies and only 1% of them can run JavaScript at this point, that directly answers this question. And the reason is that Google Analytics and many other tracking softwares work by using a JavaScript code snippet, which is inserted into page source code. If that snippet isn't run, then the user won't appear in your analytics screens. And most bots, 99% of bots are unable to run JavaScript, so they won't run that snippet, thus they won't appear in your search or in your Google Analytic results. Okay, we have a couple of more. 1 second here. You said bots can perform web app attacks. What kind of attacks do they do? So one of the examples that I gave was distributed denial of service. So basically, to achieve the volume of a DDoS attack, bots are required. It would just be impractical and maybe impossible to achieve that kind of volume with humans. Other types of attacks that can be automated are SQL injection, which is an attack where basically a bot or a human hacker is going to insert SQL commands into an input field in a website, hoping that it will be passed on to a database so that they can pull information out of the database. Also, cross-site scripting, which is another common type of attack, can be performed by bots. It's very similar in nature to SQL injection. The idea is to insert a script into a website input area, whether that be a form field or into the URL bar, with the goal of having the website run that script. So those are a couple of examples. Let's see, the next one. Why can't I just block bad bots with my firewall? Good question. So basically the reason is that most firewalls are network-based. They're not really designed to deal with web traffic or HTTP traffic. Bots, typically, they are part of the web traffic, so they fall into clients that are using HTTP to make requests. They use valid requests, so it'll slide right through your firewall without being detected. Another point would be that a firewall would have no ability to determine if it was a good or bad bot. So if it did have the ability to look into HTTP requests, it wouldn't know if this is good or bad bot. And again, you don't want to block legitimate bots. You just want to block the bad bots. Another question. Does Encapsula work with sites hosted on clouds like AWS? The answer there, short answer is yes. Encapsula has over 40,000 customers. We're protecting hundreds of thousands of enterprise websites. These sites have all sorts of different architectures and environments. They could be hosted on-prem. They could be hosted in clouds. Basically, from our point of view, AWS is a perfect environment for us for our customers to deploy on. It really doesn't matter where they're deployed. You just turn on the service, route traffic to us, and we're able to help deal with web app attacks and bad bots. One of the interesting things about AWS is it has the ability to scale on demand. That's no problem for us to deal with. Let's see if we have any more questions. One moment. That appears to be the last question. With that, I want to thank you for attending our webinar. We will post a recorded version on our website, and we will send out any other questions, the answers to them offline. Feel free to send any further questions to info@encapsula.com. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.